Welcome to Byte-Sized Agency Briefs, a webinar series that packs a ton of important agency information on one topic from one expert into a 25-minute brief. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Thanks for tuning in. This is Byte-Sized Agency Briefs. I'm your host, Steve Guberman from Agency Outside, where I work with agency owners to help build the agency of their dreams. I'm here with my friend Lisa Cunningham from Treehouse Marketing. Lisa is a project manager, agency ops guru for hire. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome.
That's accurate. Yeah.
Awesome. So thanks for joining me. Really excited to talk about what you're up to and the expertise that you bring to agencies. I'm going to give a quick background on how you got here and kind of the expertise that you bring to the table.
Sure. Way back, what feels like eons ago, when I started my career, I ended up working for an agency. I was actually an assistant traffic manager at the time. So I really learned that whole concept of being that hub, that center of the agency, and helping all the projects, keep moving, basically. And that was really something that I guess I just really took to and thought was really interesting. Back in that time, we really just used Excel spreadsheets and did things the old-fashioned way. It was just kind of, that's how it just seemed to work best. Yeah. So since then, I've had a lot of different marketing roles, some in agencies, some in corporate marketing departments. And I found that, pretty much everything I do, no matter what the title is, there was always an element of that project management that I would take from that original experience and kind of apply it to what I was doing, whether it was for the whole team or for myself. And I don't know, I realized, I guess I just really like to organize things that way and set up systems to keep things organized. And so I don't know, I guess it just evolved and it's become, something that I like to do. But I've also gained along the way, I think, a lot of just general marketing skills that I think really, email setup, social media, I've dabbled in all the things because sometimes as a project manager, it was necessary to kind of wear a few hats and support people in different areas. So I have an interest in all of it, but I'm passionate about it. I have a lot of interest in it, and having all that kind of really helps me communicate with all the different members on the team. And it's just a role that I really like to be in. So,
yeah. You nailed a couple of key factors that a really good PM needs to have, right? So, understanding systems, understanding how to keep things moving along, and being that central hub for the team or whatever. Calling it a traffic manager, I haven't heard that phrase, long, that's right. Pre-digital. That's when you had a whiteboard and you were moving things like that, carrying plastic jackets from one person.
It took me a while to get rid of folders, to know that okay, you don't need a folder for every client or every project.
Every job.
Yeah. I've been there.
I do miss that though. Having that slanted vertical thing on everybody's desk where it's
Yep. I used to organize them for the designer in order of, priority and all that good stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So you essentially come into an agency, take a look at systems they've got in place, tools they're using, and then you're off to the next party, or what's your typical process?
There's a few agencies that I've worked with in more of an ongoing kind of capacity where I've, served as their ongoing day-to-day marketing manager or operations manager. For the most part, what I really like to do is come in and kind of help agencies either streamline what they already have, but basically, just kind of get a feel for what it is they're struggling with, what isn't moving smoothly, and where we can maybe find some ways to resolve that. I love all the different tools. I play around in all the different tools just because it's fun. So I like to have suggestions for people and say, oh, did you know that you could do this? Or, just kind of help them streamline and smooth out the process. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite PM tools that you're playing with these days?
Gosh, it's funny because I've tried so many, and it really is everything has a plus and a minus, right? Some try to do it all and it's too much, and some don't do enough. And I've used ClickUp a lot lately. It became the hot thing, I think, a couple of years ago. I was looking for alternatives to Asana. I thought it was really cool that ClickUp had some features that Asana didn't, but I have to admit, I still like the simplicity of Asana sometimes. I am very much more, as I mentioned, the Excel spreadsheet. I'm more of a list person than a
Okay.
cards person. I try to shift sometimes, but I'm more of like a cards. Like I never really took to Trello very well. It's okay, but I really like that
Yeah.
list kind of situation and sorting and all that kind of stuff. So I think ClickUp and Asana are two of my favorites. Teamwork can be great. It's all a matter of how you use it too, though, right? Like getting it set up to a way that really makes sense. But I got to be honest, like I don't think I've worked with a single tool where there hasn't been at least someone or some people on the team that don't feel a little frustrated with it or a little bit like overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, there's always a learning curve, or there's this is great, but it doesn't do that, or
Right.
it does, they try to do everything, now it's too much, or and I don't think there's really an all-in-one that does everything, or maybe there's the mindset that it shouldn't do. I should have my time tracking over here in, let's say, Harvest, but I want to do PM over here in Asana, and the two shouldn't ever, there's always something missing, or
That's part of what I think is like there's this line, this balance between having the right tools, not having too many tools, but not kind of putting all of your eggs in one basket either. So that's part of it, is trying to figure out how can we just use, the minimum number of tools. I think I've thought it out before, and I had like 5 or 6 that just really seemed necessary, and like that should pretty much cover it, and they all integrate pretty well. So
you're a list person. I'm a list
am.
person. I love lists. I've got notebooks and pads with lists. I love spreadsheets. But I'm also kind of a fan of the cards. So when you're doing an assessment with an agency, do you take that into consideration of like how visual are they, and how do they best receive data, and are they email people? Do they want a desktop notification? Is Slack, like, how do you take all of the personalities into consideration?
That can be difficult because, like I said, people can get overwhelmed. Really, I tend to explain like why I think there's reasons for certain things, like communication can be streamlined, and like, yes, you might need email for some things. I personally don't really love the idea. I don't think that email really needs to be used internally for teams. Really, I think it's easier to use Slack if it's necessary, or to do things in the PM system because you have your trail there. So like I would usually try to explain my reason behind, let's keep the email inbox for client stuff and things like that, and let's kind of set rules for what each different communication is used for, and see if everybody can get on board with that. I mean, that's really, I guess, the main thing, is to say, like with the cards, hey, I've set this up. I really think it's important to talk to some of the key people on the team, not just the agency owner, and get a feel for how the agency owner is going to look at it. Sometimes there's already a project manager or somebody, but they're too in the weeds to really step back and try to resolve the problem. So I might be like working with them to say, hey, let's take a look at what you've got working and where you feel like your issues are, and what you'd like to see improved, or what you hear the team saying or the owner saying. So they'd be my main key point. But then we would obviously want to run it past like at least the head designer, some of the main team members, to make sure that they're all on board and they say, we can get on this train, like, we could deal with this. So because I mean, like I said, it's not perfect, and there's always some steps that some people might not love to do, but without people following the consistent thing, it can get a little crazy. So we all know that.
Yeah, and that, to me, that's an interesting point. So you come in, you diagnose, you build systems. Do you get follow back ups of like, hey, Margaret really isn't following instructions. Can you come in and retrain her? Or, Joe just, is defiant and won't do Monday.com, or like, do you get those kind of complaints of like, how do we get everybody on board?
I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to to the agency owner or the person that's managing the team, really, to say like, look, this is what you need to do, and this is why you need to do it. A lot of us are living in most of us are in a remote world in this situation, and a lot of us are in a contractor type world. So it is a little bit hard to get everyone to conform to things. And that's another one of the reasons why keeping it pretty simple, or as simple as we can, going back in and training people, breaking it down a little further, is something that that I can go in, or I go in and do if someone just needs a little more help walking through something. But definitely doing like training videos. I use Loom a lot, so they've got this resource where they can go back and take a look at it, and kind of outlining the different steps of just a process. So we can outline basically an SOP of how we're going to use different things, and that basically is what people are supposed to go back to, and if they really just refuse to, I guess at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the agency owner to decide which battles they want to fight, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
where can they be flexible and where do they not want to be flexible?
So that's a project management tool that will win, right? If there's gamification built in for the employees where they can say, I'm following the SOP and I'm winning. Look at the leaderboard. Look, my score is higher than your score. That's how you get people to sign on, is gamify it and turn some prizes into it.
That is true. Honestly, I haven't really tried that, but that's actually a really good thing. And I don't know if many project management systems, I mean, there is leaderboards, of course, you know, there's like, let's see how much you can get checked off. But yeah, it would be really cool if they really integrated a little bit more of that into their systems, their interfaces. I think that would be pretty neat. It's an idea.
Yeah. I don't know. I can get pretty dark. So I'm thinking, all right, if you're not filling out your timesheet, your chair is like zapping you at some point, or you know,
right.
Here's an electric reminder, like, I don't know, your keyboard starts zapping you. So you're a hired fixer. What are some of like the really serious things you've seen agencies just fully get wrong that you're like, we got to fully fix this?
Sometimes it's just the like even Google Workspace, which I consider to be kind of a foundation. I know some people, I'm a Google girl, but you know, some people use Microsoft or other things. Google's really my preference. But just trying to get that set up, or in some cases it's you know, maybe Dropbox, like just getting everybody on the same page with getting people set up with the email addresses if you're going to be on a Google Workspace, and setting up a group so that everyone who doesn't have that email address can still access all the files. Like, that's something that I think I've been able to simplify for people that I've seen struggle with. I'm pretty knowledgeable with it, but even if I dig really deep, you know, it'll be like, if I were in a big organization, I think it would get a little bit, you know, sometimes there's a lot you could do with Google Workspace. But yeah, just, you know, setting up teams and getting all of that done is probably one of the main foundational things, that and streamlining communications. So I'd say the Google and all of that, and like the asset management and how that ties in, and then communication, because there really are some teams that I've seen, like stuff is just coming from everywhere and you don't know, you know, like, I know I saw this, but was it in the PM system? Was it in Slack? Was it in email? And there's a lot, there's a lot of different ways you can communicate. So I think kind of setting some boundaries and guidelines for that, and trying to get everybody used to that is one of the bigger things that I've seen.
Yeah, the changing of behaviors. You know, I've been involved in setting up like wikis on intranets of, here's, you know, this topic, this topic, this topic, and these are the procedures for each of it. So like an intranet wiki is a great tool to use, but then it's more behavioral, and how do I change my behaviors? It's kind of like people that are not used to tracking their time, and suddenly I need to track my time. Not an easy shift for a person to do, but certainly having documentation in place and SOPs so that people can like, all right, do this and then do this. Kind of like, you know, a monkey can do it, a caveman can do it, I can do it. Yeah,
you just have to find the time and have the commitment to actually like go back through it. But if you put all those resources in one place, and you know, I always, like I said, list person, so I believe in reminders. And you know, like if I think it's something that's going to fall off my radar personally, stick it in the PM system and I assign it to myself, you know, like things like that, like, you know, just remember to do this today, or put it on your calendar or something like that. You know, that I think really helps people get into that habit, and is kind of that safety net for them. Like worst case scenario, they've got a reminder. So
do you use like middleware like Zapier in order to do some of those things?
You know, Zapier is another one where I really love it. I don't use it a ton. I could use it a lot more for people. I haven't really found a lot of situations where I've really needed to use it for agencies, because the tools already integrate pretty well, or you're just using some separate ones and they don't really need to integrate more than they already do, I guess. But yeah, I've definitely used it. I think it's great. But the one problem I find a lot is that it's limited on the tools I need and the information I need. I'm always like, it doesn't do what I want it to do. So, and I know there's APIs and like fancy stuff that's a bit over my head. I always want to learn more about that, but I'm not really into I'm not really familiar with the coding and all of that that's necessary to make those enhanced things happen. But I know there are ways to do it. So
there are peer tools like Zapier. I don't remember their names off the top of my head. The beauty of them is they handle the API end-to-end connections. So you don't have to do coding. It's so satisfying when you're in tool A and you jump into Zapier and then connect it to tool B.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see things start working and it's like, oh, it dumped that new lead from my Gravity form into my
Right.
CRM, or whatever that thing might be, from my project management tool into my whatever. To
Mm-hmm.
me, that's pretty satisfying when you connect it and
It
it
is.
actually works and it's humming along. Some of them are limiting Zapier, not to bash one tool over another. You can hit that limit and now you're paying tons of money
That's true too.
because it's, each connection point is money and blah, blah, blah. Some of
That's
the
how
other
they
ones are
get you, right?
cheaper. Yeah. So, but to your point, there's so many tools. And if I've got 3-4 tools, how do I bring them all together? Do you play in the dashboard space at all? I don't remember any of the names of them, but there's ones where like you can put it up on a screen and it'll pull in your this and that and your other tool. And so now you've got everything in one visual workspace. Yeah.
I don't, well, that's more, the one I'm thinking of is more of a scheduler thing. And I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but you can have different things, your to-dos all come together and then you could like plan them on your calendar.
Oh, cool.
But then there's also things like, I use one called Wavebox to like be in different accounts, and it kind of keeps them all separate, but in one window.
Oh, interesting.
If
Yeah.
that, the other one, Shift. That's what the one that's similar to Wavebox, kind of the same thing. But if you don't have multiple like Google accounts you need to be in, then that's not a big deal. But it's kind of cool because it helps you stay logged in, so you don't have to like do that back and forth kind of thing if you've got multiple things that you're dealing with. But yeah, I've used some dashboards that way, but really, I really keep most things for people in the PM system. Like,
Okay.
I really believe like if everything's basically in one place and we have one thing to check. So
Yeah.
that's what I try to do most often. That's not to say people don't often have their own little checklists here and there, or their handwritten ones, because we love lists.
Yeah.
But I think it's really good to, to keep most of it all in one place. Yeah. And I was thinking again about, the automations and everything. And it really is nice to have those things kind of copy over, especially in kind of that CRM experience, like you were talking about, when there's something new and it kind of kicks off something else.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of opportunity to use those kinds of things too.
Yeah. What are some new tools that you see coming out that people are starting to play with that you're excited about?
Gosh, that's a good question. What have I seen lately? Well, I don't know that a lot of people are playing with this yet, but I have always been a fan of databases, and kind of learned Access at one point, and I really love that that kind of thing. So Airtable is one that I think a lot of people use for for organizing assets, or even for project management and for mailing databases, all that kind of stuff. And it does some cool things. I was saying that I realized recently that that Google's working on something similar, but it's still in early stages, but it looks like they're trying to compete with that a little bit at some point. It does some basic stuff. It's pretty cool. If you're looking for something besides just Google Sheets, if you need something that's a little bit more structured. Something that I've thought was really cool is some other asset managers. Like there's one out there called Air. I haven't really needed it for people because I just usually have used Google Workspace, but it's a lot more visual for people in the marketing space. It's just a lot easier to see all of your assets and like gather them for certain clients and things. It's just kind of a different approach. And I think that one looks pretty neat. I feel like there's one other thing that really popped in my head, but I'm having trouble with it now. So we'll just.
No worries. Yeah. It's amazing how certain agencies really latch on. Like I have a client, their entire agency is run on Airtable, every aspect of it. And they were a print shop previously, so they understand traffic management. They literally used to have the board on the wall of where things are in production. Everything is in Airtable. But that whole rational database kind of mindset is super interesting that they do, and be cool to see other players in that space from a PM standpoint. So the shift for you over the past couple of years has gotten more and more in demand as more and more agencies have gone remote. What were some of their, I guess, key stumbling blocks of being in person, and now we've got to do it remote, that they were figuring out transitions for?
Yeah, again, I would say, a lot of it's probably some of the same things. Communication is a big one, trying to get everybody on the same page with things, but also trying to, in the office days, we all had these, secure drives. We had an IT team to like take care of all that stuff.
Yeah.
So now, like the Google Workspace, things like that, being able to set the team up in a way that everybody can work with it, that it's not complicated for everybody, that it's not necessarily like, you need an IT person to deal with it, but that you just have someone to kind of help get everyone set up in a way that they can really use everything as efficiently as possible. So,
Yeah.
even getting email addresses for your team members, who's going to have an official domain email address and how do you do that versus, the other, just all of that kind of stuff. So, and that's all the technical part. Obviously there's the team building type part too, right? Like the how do you keep everyone engaged? And that's not something that I myself have done a lot of. I really am more in the technical, in the operations side of it, but it's really, I think it is important to try to think a little bit more about how we do that and keep the team having fun. I've worked with some teams that clearly had been in the office a lot together. And so you could just see in their chats that they had a lot more fun, like they could all joke with each other in a way because they knew each other's personality. Whereas in these fully remote teams, we're all just a little bit different. There's also the difference between full-time and contract and all that kind of stuff. We got a lot more going on if we're kind of part-time too. So
yeah, interesting times for agencies, and there's tons of tools and tons of ways to maintain and manage culture and bring people on board and get things done. So your expertise is definitely of great value to a lot of agencies, I'm sure. Want to jump into a couple real quick off topic, just kind of rapid fire questions. So coming out of COVID, we're 2+ years after this thing kicked in. What's something that you've taken away, a lesson that you've learned from pandemic, quarantine, COVID that you've put into play in your life these days?
I'd say the one thing, I guess, is just that like you really never know like what can happen that just turns everything around, and it's one small thing that we're feeling impacts in so many different ways. It's like, who would have thought, that all of these things, the remote world and all of that would change so drastically. So I guess it's really just that, like, being flexible. And on one hand, I'm glad I was already remote and already kind of doing this stuff. So it wasn't a big transition, but I kind of feel like keep doing it that way, like I don't want to get too, I kind of feel like this situation, being remote, being flexible, homeschooling, all that stuff was really necessary. So I'd say that's really a takeaway.
Awesome. What's a book or a podcast or an audio book that you're really into right now?
Gosh, I'm trying to, you know what? I've got a bunch behind me that I'm actually trying to read all the time that are business related. I'm trying to think of something else. I think most of my books lately have been ones I've been reading my daughter at bedtime, which is really sad. But if I have to, I'm going to confess, this is completely unwork related, but I'm an Outlander fan. I started reading those a while ago. So I'm still working my way through like 9 of those. So that's like a guilty pleasure kind. I don't know if you know much about Outlander, but yeah.
I've heard of it. I've never read it, but hey, we're all entitled. That's fine.
Yeah. So it's not, yeah.
All right. And then finally, what's a super invaluable piece of business advice that you can leave for an agency owner?
Learning how to delegate and to let go and to trust people is really key. It's not easy. I mean, it's hard for everyone. But kind of just really trusting people and being open to suggestions, especially when it comes to systems and better ways to do things, is definitely important. Not even better ways. Let's just say alternative, because I don't want to say someone's way is better than somebody else's. Alternative.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. Awesome. Super helpful. Lisa, I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here with me. And we'll drop your contact info in the notes below. So Lisa Cunningham from Treehouse Marketing, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great.
Thanks again for tuning in to Byte-Sized Agency Briefs. As always, if you found value in this episode, chances are someone else will too. So please share it with your network. Also, if you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love, drop me a note. Let's get them on. Finally, find someone to hug today.